Good morning, everyone. Hello, thank you for coming. I know some of you are not still awake, or maybe they're on their way. So, because we have some people waiting online as well, Ingrid, so I think we will start and we just give it, take it slowly, not very slowly, because we have a program as well. So I would like to say good morning again, and very happy to chair this very important session. The plenary session, is about a better integrated Euro-Mediterranean region to meet common challenges, enhancing the region's resilience through regional value chains. So basically yesterday in the plenary, we talked about how the changes in the geopolitical around the world is affecting relations in the EU-Med region. So, and there we find out that there should be a better integration within the region, and that external shocks, such as that what we encountered, the COVID, the war in Ukraine, these has affected the region because of its vulnerability. So this all tell us that nearshoring is becoming an important opportunity for the EU-Med region. And the region needs to grasp this. So in a study we recently conducted, we found out that the EU is importing 400 goods, and the South Med are exporting these 400 goods. However, they're not trading in between each other, these 400 goods. So this is just an example to tell us how much opportunities the South Med countries has in integrating with the EU. In fact, the trade of the South Med countries represent only 4.5% of EU total trade. So yesterday we talked about why we need to do the integration, and today we hopefully address how. So through value chains, we feel that this is the way forward for the region. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker today. So we have Ingrid Schweger. She's the Deputy Head of Unit Directorate General of Neighborhood and Enlargement at the negotiation at the European Commission, and she's joining us online. We have Mr. Mohammed El-Razaz, who is Economic Development and Employment Head of Sector, Union for the Mediterranean. Morning. We have Marc Lautier. He's a Professor of Economics, University of Rennes 2, France, and he specializes in economic development policies and trade. Good morning. We have Anna Ferragina. She's an Associate Professor, Department of Economics and Statistics at CELP, University of Salerno, Italy, and she's also specialized in trade and value chain and SMEs, and a member of FEMISE. We have Sana Afouez. She's the founder and CEO of Women Entrepreneur Initiative. She's based in Brussels, but she works across the MENA region to support women being entrepreneurs, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about her work. Good morning. Good morning, Ingrid.
Good morning, his colleagues and the distinguished participants. I'm very happy to join you, although unfortunately only virtually. But I would like to say a few words how the EU and EU policies can contribute to regional value chains in the southern neighborhood, if that is fine.
Yes, so Ingrid, it's great to have you online. We wish you were here with us, but of course we understand how busy you are. So if you can just talk to us about how can EU policies contribute to promoting the development of regional value chains in the Mediterranean?
I think we all agree that there is this huge potential of enhancing EU and Mediterranean regional value chains in the new geopolitical context, post-COVID and with the war in Ukraine. Melissa, the study you mentioned identified this. Also, the UFN OECD report on regional
it requires economic reforms and regulatory convergence if companies and value chains want to work together. And I think we are aware of the challenges and the imperfections uh, of the regulatory framework in the region towards a market economy, and also depending, of course, on the situations, the lack of reforms, which resulted in a history of low growth and limited job creation. And there we have labor markets that exclude some very important parts of the population, especially young people and women. There is, of course, also the question of market size, of competitiveness, but also of modern transport and digital infrastructures which connect the economies across borders, as well as the issue of access to finance. And even I would say, because we work quite a lot on value chains, the notion of cooperating, that enterprises cooperate along certain value chains or along certain product chains, it's not equally well developed in everywhere. And I think we need to acknowledge this diversity in the region. The picture is very uneven. Morocco cannot be compared with Lebanon. Egypt, with the size, is not in the same situation as Tunisia and Jordan, or Palestine and Libya for that matter. And we also need to acknowledge that there is no single remedy. It really requires a long-term perspective and a comprehensive partnership which works on all these elements together. And I think that's where the EU policies come in. And so the question is, where do we stand from an EU perspective, and where does the agenda for the Mediterranean come in? The agenda is now a little over 2 years old. It was launched in 2021 in the context of the pandemic. The main question is the agenda still relevant? And we also started some consultations already, and the answer in our view is yes. The 5 thematic priorities identified in the agenda and the flagships for concrete investments identified in the economic and investment plan, they reflect really the needs on the ground. And it's very comprehensive. It covers a range of policies from human development, skills development, rule of law, economic development, to the green and digital transitions. And we also think that the people-centered approach is more relevant than ever. In line with the agenda, we enhance this partnership, and we really want to work with the opportunities for regional integration, trade, investments in areas also which are now coming not only out of the new geopolitical context and the aggression in Ukraine, with more emphasis on energy, but also from the climate conditions and the, I mean, very much characterized by the recent disasters everywhere, but I'm having in particular in mind in Morocco and Libya, the devastating events. So there is a push also on climate action and on a transition to green energy. So how can EU policies promote these regional value chains? What we see on the positive side, that in all countries there's quite a vibrant private sector. So following the disruption of the global value chains in the context of post-COVID, nearshoring has been put forward. And we think what it requires is also, companies can't do that if there's no enabling environment. And this is where we should continue also working together and pushing for reforms. It means moving towards an equal playing field between the state-owned enterprises and private firms. It means promoting the digital transition, both in the public and private sectors. It means better targeting subsidies that really reach the most vulnerable, allowing for more competition, but also including social and environmental concerns in trade and investment policies. And certainly regulatory convergence on some of these issues would facilitate greatly the development of EU and Mediterranean, and also within the Mediterranean value chains along this trend. I think our trade and industry-related policies will certainly have an impact on private sector development and value chains. Just to give you a concrete example, the Green and Circular Economy Act or the Carbon Adjustment Mechanism, this could create opportunities for the modernization and prioritization of certain strategic value chains. And furthermore, energy cooperation should be looked at from a double perspective. On the one hand, securing and supporting energy security while working very strongly towards the Paris Agreement commitments. And there, the region really represents unparalleled opportunities, cleaner energy, the massive deployment of renewables and clean hydrogen. And we have heard this political attention as recently as the G20 summit, highlighting the India, Middle East, Europe corridors, for example. And we really think that energy and climate actions, they can become vectors for economic development and also for job creation, because it's very future oriented. Two last points on supporting value chains. We should not forget decent job creation. It's in a region where, according to UNICEF, by the year 2050, we will have an unprecedentedly large priority or part of the population, which will be in their most productive years. We really need to make the most of young talent and ambition, focus on job creation, invest in future-oriented value chains and sectors which have this potential for job creation. So also a closer look or zooming in on job creation. Not to mention that 2023 is also the year of the European Year of Skills. So jobs and skills, this really goes hand in hand. And for this reason, because the employment agenda is very important, just to make you aware, we are also working on a regional Team Europe initiative focused on job creation through trade and investment. And this is done together with 5 member states, their development agencies and banks, as well as the EIB and the EBRD. And it also includes support to value chain development. Sorry. To recap, our approach is really to connect the dots. So the agenda for the Mediterranean as the comprehensive framework behind it, with this human-centric approach, and then concrete policies and examples how we can promote regional and cross-regional cooperation, including for value chain development.
Thank you so much, Ingrid, for a very elaborate agenda. It's clear that we have a lot to do, and the role of the European Commission is essential in bringing the two sides of the Mediterranean together. And as we saw, there is a lot that already been done and will be done to ensure that this integration is going in the right direction, all to the benefit of the South and the North as well. And as Ingrid pointed out, so many important issues. But I think also what is important for the South is the job creation issue, and how this integration will create decent jobs and will give enhancement to the development of the countries. Thank you so much, Ingrid, for your very interesting and elaborate contribution. So I turn to Mr. Mohammed Razaz, and so the agenda is full, and we know the integration is important now. So how can the regional fora contribute to promoting the development of regional value chains in the Mediterranean? So if you can also address what are the main challenges that is actually stopping the region from being integrated. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't know if you can hear me well. I guess you do. Thank you very much, and very happy to be here in this panel of distinguished speakers. And I would like to start by actually seconding what Ingrid Schweiger has just mentioned, that we have to recognize the heterogeneity of the sub-regions even within the greater Euro-Mediterranean region. So Jordan is not Tunisia, Morocco is not Egypt. And I believe that it's precisely because of this diversity that the potential for a more integrated value chain in the region, or value chains, would be even more opportune. Let's go back in time a little bit to remember that the very concept of value chain was coined for the first time by an economist that I'm sure you all know, Michael Porter, from Porter's model. And it was at the beginning at a micro scale. So seeing a company as a set of interlinked value-creating activities. Then by projection and through globalized production lines and service provision, there developed the concept of regional and then global value chains. I believe that as regional fora, we are very aware of a boundary condition at the outset, which is the political willingness of the member states. And this applies to any regional forum that has member states that obviously are sovereign in their decision. Having said that, though, we also know how to mobilize an action-oriented agenda in the region towards developing more integrated value chains. And this approach, I can use the acronym MCM. So mapping, consultation, mobilization. If you want to understand the current realities, challenges, and trends on the ground and the gaps that need to be bridged, you need to start with a good and sound mapping exercise. And once you've identified the areas of action, you then start a broader consultation with multiple classes of stakeholders to make sure that the discussion is inclusive. And then you take it to the policy makers and you start trying to mobilize your ecosystem. This is something that we know about very well where I work, which is the Union for the Mediterranean. And for those of you who are not familiar, it's an intergovernmental organization of 43 member states whose main raison d'etre is to promote regional cooperation and integration in the region. So much has been said about the reconfiguration of global and regional value chains in the aftermath of the current disruptions, namely the COVID-19 and the crisis or the war in the Ukraine. And there have been speculations. How do we envisage a reconfigured region in terms of value chains? I've heard a lot of talk, and we've done a lot of talk about potential proximization. But in reality, the scenarios are so many. One of them is reshoring. So you slash off your supply chain altogether and do it at home. Another, of course, is the reshoring, which has prerequisites that we will tackle. And the third is friend-shoring, in case you're trying to prioritize certain geostrategic or political agendas. So at the UFM Secretariat, we've done two very important studies. One of them is precisely about the potential for value chain reconfiguration. And I have to say that the empirical evidence does not necessarily show a trend towards nearshoring or proximization because of so many, as I mentioned, impediments. We also conducted in 2021 a first edition of our UFM progress report on regional integration, which was done by OECD with the financial support of the German Development Cooperation. And back then we looked into certain domains whose integration would favor a win-win situation in the region. And these 5 domains were trade, financial markets, infrastructure, movement, as well as higher education and research. Many things have happened since 2021. So now we are in the process of developing the second edition, again with OECD, this time adding more domains and transversal cross-cutting issues like the gender dimension, like the environmental dimension, like the digital penetration and preparedness within the region to make sure that it is better suited and rather comprehensive in scale and in scope. So it should come out early in 2025. These are reports that present actionable policy recommendations to the policymakers in the region. These are things that are quantifiable, they are backed by empirical evidence, and the next step would be to mobilize the ecosystem as I've mentioned. It is within our pipeline of activities, it is within our work program for the coming years. So as an organization, I think we have been very focused. We never lost sight of this overarching goal of ours, and I'll be happy to update you over the coming years on the state of play of this mobilization.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mohamed El-Razez. Of course, we know the Union for the Mediterranean has been very, very active on this front, and we look forward to see the study. And because what we actually need is operational, actual policies. And this is, I mean, all studies, we do a lot of studies, but I think what is really lacking, how to do an impact, and this is something we talked about yesterday in our General Assembly, how can all studies make an impact, how to measure this impact, and I think things like what the European Commission is doing and also the UFM will help researchers to have policies that have an impact and has an actual role in shaping up the policy making in the South Mediterranean countries. Thank you very much for your contribution. And now move to Marc Lautier. He is a professor of economics in Rennes 2, and he is going to talk to us. Hello, Marc. Okay, so we talked about you know, the role of European Commission, UFM, and how they are promoting the integration, taking actual actions. From your point of view, and I understand that regional value chain is important also to extend to Africa. As we know, Africa has been signing the African Free Trade Continental Agreement, and this could represent potential for the South Mediterranean countries to promote its trade, to get more closer to the African continent. So Marc has done a study, or like contributed to a report that we've been working on with the Afrexim Bank. And he did an interesting like trend and overview of how can African countries and SMEs benefit from the windows of opportunities within the regional value chain, given the current position of other regions such as East Asia, which you understand is taking the lead on that, but maybe not. And what are the implications for the EU trade policy? Marc.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Maryse, and thank you to the organizer to invite me on this session. I would like to focus on two aspects of global changes, which are quite complementary, and some implication for regional trade in the Euromed area in manufacturing, and to integrate a little bit so the African continent into the picture and into the issue. So I have 5 points and one conclusion. First, as you know, it's quite it's rather not new, the 21st century is the African century, while the previous period was a period in which most of the growth of the labor force in the world came from Asia, 2/3 roughly during the 70 or 60 last years. Now, and for the coming decades, the growth of the labor force at the world level, I mean, not only at the regional level, will come for Africa. We know that already more than 700 millions workers will enter the labor market in Africa in the next 3 decades, in the next 30 years. Okay, So it means that there will be a need to create 20 million to 30 million jobs every year. And the question is what kind of jobs and potentially where will be these jobs. So I will not continue on the migration issue, but it's of course behind the picture. And in this context, sorry, thank you. In this context, in the manufacturing sector, so far, have Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, so SSA on my figure, and North Africa as well as North Africa, they have remained marginal actors in the world manufacturing industry. So the picture is not here about trade, it's about value added, okay? So it means real revenue created by the manufacturing sector. Roughly, it's 1% plus 1% of the world manufacturing industry, so almost nothing. So as it has been said before, there is a potential, okay, clearly. And there is a potential, and it's, the picture is changing in the world manufacturing industry. The main change during the last period has been the explosive rise of China in a number of sectors and in a number of markets, and with market shares growing up to 40%, 50% of the world market. But in a number of, for a number of products in a number of sectors, it's finished. It's finished because of the wage growth and the successful economic development of China, and the competitiveness of Chinese producers in a number of sectors is decreasing. It's decreasing, and as you can see, this is the market share of Chinese producer in world trade for a number of labor-intensive products, garments, footwear, and all these other products. And you can see that roughly during the last 10 years, so of course there has been the impact of the COVID, which has perturbed the trend, but the trend is quite clear. During the last 10 years, the Chinese competitiveness declined. And it declined quite fast. It has been the case before of Japan and South Korea, of Taiwan and so on the same, roughly on the same trend, and roughly at the same speed. The difference is that the share of the market share, the Chinese market share, were so high that the decline of this market share reopens windows, very wide windows of opportunities for other producers. Other producers in the developing world, of course, rather poor countries, also low-wage countries. Just to give you one illustration, 1 point of market share lost by China in the garment industry, it accounts for, it represents $5 billion, okay? And the fall has been almost by 10 points, sorry, since the mid of the last decade. So the fresh air, the openness is rather important. So far, these opportunities have been seized by a very small number of new exporters. You have the picture here, roughly a dozen or 8 to 10 what we call smaller manufacturing exporters have benefited from these opportunities. Most of them are in East Asia, plus Bangladesh. And the growth rate of their export is huge in the garment, and here, this is the illustration, but also in other labor-intensive industries, while the traditional exporters such as China, Hong Kong, Thailand, and so on are decreasing. But the point is that, in fact, these new exporters are much smaller than China. Cambodia, which is very dynamic, Myanmar, who was very dynamic during a period of time, and so on, they are much smaller than China, and they won't be able to absorb all the capacities, let's say, liberated by the Chinese manufacturing industry. And through a very traditional mechanism of wage rise, roughly when the wages increase too much in the labor-intensive industry, and the new investors and buyers, they move to other localization, cheaper. Already, Vietnam, for instance, is becoming to be expensive for producers because of the rise of wages. So it means that these countries will not absorb all these activities. They cannot. And we have tried to calculate, to estimate when and what would be the impact of the saturation of their capacities. And roughly what we estimated is that at the end of this decade, so early 2030, 2035, something like that, can you the next one? There will be a new opportunities, a new window of opportunity for different countries, not in East Asia, where the labor market will be saturated and there won't be enough resources and capacity to expand this production and this export. And in fact, the direction where this production can move, they are quite limited. They are quite limited. In fact, there are two directions where for the next decade and the following one, you will find, or you could find still a huge number of workers with relatively low wages, which are India and Africa. And the potential is not small at all, especially if we compare, in the case of Africa, with the current level of exports or of manufacturing production. We estimate potential in terms of export for 2033 at $160 billion, only for the three major labor-intensive industries. So $160 billion of new exports coming from new localization. Very probably Africa, but it will depend, of course, how it is seized by the countries. So there is quite a huge potential, and it will modify the issue of nearshoring, reshoring, and so on, because Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, as well as North Africa, are rather close to the European market for us. So I don't know whether I can just put a point on the EU policy.
Yes, 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. So, it's a very important issue, especially here, to discuss the EU trade policy and the incentives and preferential trade policy and schemes to promote regional integration and especially export from South Mediterranean countries as well as African countries in general. I mean, as it has been said before, it hasn't yet happened. There is still a potential, but it doesn't work so far. It doesn't work. We all have clauses from China, Bangladesh, or Vietnam, but not much from Egypt, Morocco, or Tunisia, and less from the south of part Sub-Saharan Africa. One of the issues I think for the EU policy is to change the focus, to focus for. I mean, to stimulate regional integration by trade. First, you need to have countries, your partners, that export. To export, you need to be competitive. And the first priority of the EU policy at this stage, especially for the North African countries, would be to stimulate the export competitiveness, and then to think after that to regional integration. And in terms of preferential scheme, it should move to much simpler trade incentives, such as the US AGOA scheme that allow, for instance, the producer to import inputs from every part of the world without any constraints, while in most of the EU scheme, you need to have a regional, local content value and to add one part of Egyptian button plus one part of a Jordanian thing. And so it's a mess. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't give competitiveness. If you can save 12% or 14% in duty, in import duty from Europe, but you lose 20% in terms of cost competitiveness because you need to buy fabrics at a non-competitive price while your competitors use Chinese or Vietnamese fabrics much more competitive. There is no gain. There is it's not effective. It cannot work. So I think the most important would be to move from regional integration priority to export competitiveness, to support export competitiveness, and then to benefit, I hope, from regional integration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, very much. This was very interesting to see the amount of opportunities that is given to the South Med, and obviously we agree that competitiveness is a key to be able to enter the regional value chain. And with this, I turn to Anna Ferragina, who's Associate Professor at Department of Economics and Statistics, University of Salerno. And talking about competitiveness, Anna, which we know is very important, how can the SMEs who can be prepared to be integrated in the regional value chain? Are they ready yet? What can be the role of SMEs in this sense?
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to this very interesting session. Yeah, I'm very happy to speak about the SMEs because many topics have been covered, and I was also doing my speech on other things that have been said. I would like to stress on this very relevant issue of SMEs because we know that with respect to large companies, they have always been at disadvantage in terms of internationalization and especially in integration into global value chain. So when we look at the recent analysis, and by the way, I think that we need to improve a little bit our knowledge or mapping is a very important thing, and also doing a firm level survey because we need to know more because there is an under-investigated analysis about the South Mediterranean countries that we need to feel, okay, we need to have an impact also in the operational policy, but we need to know much more with micro level analysis. And about this, I would like to mention, for instance, the analysis which have been very useful, carried out by using firm-level data by World Bank Enterprise Survey, that just give us the real figures of the participation of smaller firms that are not able to really serve so much international market. They just mostly based on domestic market. They are not able to afford complex type of integration, and one of these is a global value chain, which is the top of the level of integration into international trade. So by the way, it's very important to know as well that global value chain is a big opportunity because by joining a global value chain, they reduce the sunk cost of trade. They have a better chance to exploit their comparative advantage without having to afford the whole production process, the effort of going abroad and enter export market. So I think it's a very important thing. But we know that still larger firms are those that have the quality and the characteristics to succeed. So small and medium enterprises, generally not foreign owned, are not having a recognized quality certification, which is essential, has been underlined, and we need also regulation and convergence into this standard of regulation. So we need to have very much to be aware that vertical fragmentation needs very much to meet quality level, and firms need to be prepared to that because the figures so far are a bit worrying. If we know that generally the firm that export, import, and do also foreign have also foreign certification are as minority, like 1.5% in the area. When we look at small and medium enterprises, this comes to be like 0.4%. So which means that there is a real problem. The increasing complexity needs that they need to apply for recognized certification, and of course this needs to be done by having support for carrying on international standard, and to avoid that they need to replicate quality certification for different destination of their production. So and always we know the data says that the picture is now worrying about this. So internationalization is always giving us a picture of firms that are certified, 84% of them. But when we look at the whole population of traders, only 22 have certification, and even domestic firms are just a minority that are really involved in global value chain. Just 97% are domestic firms. So this is the real problem that we all know. At the same time, I would like not to give just a negative picture, because we know that there are both sides of the story. When small and medium enterprises can really benefit from entrance into global value chain, then all the benefit that we all know are in terms of development, job creation, are probably achieved, provided that, of course, this is done by affording the high top quality segment. So it's again, it's a matter of quality. So we need to upgrade is the essential message. And also then there is increased specialization, economies of scale, knowledge spillover, and improvement in performance, because we know that it's always in some few studies are showing us that, especially for the area, that when we have this achievement of participation in global value chain, the performance of firms are increasing. Of course, there is better productivity is allowing to be able to join a global value chain, but then there is also the learning by doing this global value chain effect. So they have better performance, better productivity, better employment, more skilled labor employment, and many different performance increase. So I think it's very important anyway, as we all know, that, and I don't want to repeat that, all depends very much on the business environment, because this is crucial to achieve the productivity level that is needed to enter foreign market as a participant into a global value chain. And so we come back to the idea of Roderick of domestic integration is very important, because if you achieve this improvement in some fundamentals of the economy and invest in human capital and business environment, then you increase your productivity, and this is quite a very crucial mandatory step. Thank you. I think I've done.
Thank you, Anna. You touched upon something very important, which relates to human capital as well, and as skills, and how important it is to integrate SMEs, not only large firms, and to simplify. Again, we talk about simplification of trade, and I think is one of the major challenges for the integration is the complicated trade agreements. And this is also talked about mapping, which also Mohamed Razaz talked about, that we need to know more. We need to have more knowledge about what's in there, and unfortunately there is not enough information, and even there is, it's not always transparent, and it's not always providing us enough knowledge about it. You also talked about how can we improve skills, and I take this word to link to my final and last speaker, not the least at all, Sana Afwez, who's the founder and CEO of Womenpreneur Initiative, and she is going to talk to us about how skills, and particularly how can we integrate entrepreneurs. So we go from large firms, SMEs, and now we talk about human capital, we talk about skills, and she is the CEO of this initiative, organization that helps actually women particularly, but also youth in general, to be integrated and to know how to develop their skills to be entrepreneurs. Sana, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for this. Good morning, everyone. It was very interesting to listen to the previous speakers. We talked a lot about the studies. The interesting thing, while preparing for this session, I wanted to kind of check on the recent studies on the role of women in value chains. I couldn't find that much, actually. And we are talking about a region that is over 500 million, specifically the MENA region. More than 50% of this population are actually women. How can we guarantee a certain development, a certain progress, a facilitation of trade, if the half of the population itself is excluded in studies, in data, in policies? And that reflects the amount of work that we should be doing in terms of gender inclusion in every level. Because when it comes to trade, when it comes to economic crisis, when it comes to political crisis, women are usually excluded. I'll give you an example of the country where I live in at the moment, which is Belgium. Belgium in 2008 had, like the rest of the countries in the world, a financial crisis. They had to redo or to kind of prepare an economic recovery plan. At the moment, women were basically working in public sectors mainly. So Belgium had to cut budgets, specifically in the public industries. And that was the first moment in the story, in the history of Belgium, where we see the high unemployment of women. These women couldn't find jobs. Then they were like, you know what? I will become an entrepreneur. And that was the beginning of the female entrepreneurship in Belgium. And we've seen through the years the rise of female entrepreneurs in Belgium. But unfortunately, because it started from not a reason of choice, because if you want to become an entrepreneur, someone who scale up, someone who innovates, you need to choose to become an entrepreneur. They actually started entrepreneurship out of basically necessity and specifically poverty because they couldn't have a job. Female entrepreneurship is still very unstructured in Belgium. Women are operating in very small businesses. They are solo entrepreneurs in general. They are survival entrepreneurs, and they operate in poverty. And that's exactly the same thing that is happening, it has been happening for so long in the MENA region. We have very, very, very small businesses run by women, and usually women are operating more in informal economy. So we have over 60% of women in the region working in informal economy. That shows you that we are missing, not only in terms of economic progress, but even if we want to regulate trade opportunities, how can we do that if half of the population is actually working in informal economy? So while listening to also the speakers, I was kind of, very intrigued to, propose some recommendations. How can we include women, in this whole evaluation change? Now, let's talk about land and the right to own a land. If we look into the MENA region, most of these women don't have the right to own a land, but they are actually the first kind of people to have a contact with land. They are the one working on the lands. They are the one who are producing, preparing, and even selling. But then they have very minimum access to the benefits of agriculture. So that's a huge loss. So how can we do that? How can we change that? How can we make sure that these women are kind of not only contributing but benefiting from this? Well, I'll let you do that because it has been 10 years that I'm working in the field. It is just very tiring because we are operating in a very unstable region, politically speaking, economically speaking, but then culturally speaking. I mean, when you come and you advocate for women's rights to access to land, there is so much of hard kind of discussion to conduct, and still there is no results. So how can we make that change and make sure that from the Euro side that we are cooperating with the East with a complete kind of understanding of these cultural dimensions. So when women are not kind of benefiting, they are contributing very much, but they're not benefiting from this value chain. They are excluded. They are operating in poverty. Then when there is an economic crisis, political crisis, or religious crisis, there is violence. They are the first one to be victim of that different type of violence. And then there is wave of migration. And you have to know that in the MENA region, the men basically migrate. Women stay. Women stay in the crisis. They are the one dealing with the crisis. So usually they are unequipped, they are untrained, they don't have access, they don't have the funds. But yet, we're expecting from them to create miracles and just change everything. So this is kind of, just my inputs, I would say, on the complexity of actually including women. And there is yet a lot of work to be done. And I think when we look into the different conventions that have been signed, including UFM is a big partner of Womenpreneur, I think there is very important kind of emphasis to do, which is on gender. I think it should be a condition, it should be an essential condition on the countries from the South region. So when it comes to womenpreneur, what we do, we try our best, I would say, since 2016. We have started with a program of 10 women. Today we are over 19,000 women across the region. What we do is we create spaces for women where we equip them, we train them. And we are just one small kind of contributor, but we hope that through our work, we kind of, can try to push women into spaces where they can get opportunities. We train them in tech specifically, quite important field. What we have in the region that is exceptional is that the MENA region has the highest number of women studying STEM in the world. Morocco, Tunisia, and Algeria has the highest number. They have the highest number of female engineers. So this is a great, great, great opportunity, great potential that we have. We need to invest in that because what we see, although we have this high number of women studying STEM, they are invisible in the work markets. And why? Because of cultural and social norms, traditions. I mean, most of you know the region. I don't have to go through it in details, but this is the reality of things. So what happens is that these women, otherwise they turn to become entrepreneurs, to kind of, be kind of, relevant to the social and cultural kind of, rules, or they just, have the opportunity to go abroad and work somewhere else. And again, it's like, an opportunity that we miss in the South. So we need to kind of invest in that and look into that as an opportunity because here in Europe, we suffer. We don't have talent in tech. We're trying to find them. We're trying now to hire, especially in Asia. This opportunity that we have in the South, we need to take advantage of it and benefit from that. And beside this, what we do is we are, I would say, the bad guy in the room every time. Make sure that we lobby and we advocate for the voices of women. I have to say that sometimes it's frustrating and sometimes it's like pouring water on sand. Because yes, you are invited, yes, you are there, yes. Sometimes it's an imagery more than anything. And I think I would ask myself the question, why? I mean, since the Homo sapien existence, we are, dealing with inequalities. And still women don't have, their full rights anywhere in the world, like even the Scandinavian countries. So I think there is something deeper that maybe we need to examine on that. We need to make sure that, we look deeper into understanding why this issue is not solved. And I think we should be ashamed of ourselves, if we think that we want to reach a progress in the region while actually women are excluded, women are still discriminated. Most of the policies that are made, usually they are done and created and pushed by men. There are very few women in the rooms. So unless we have a room where you have everyone, diversity is celebrated, is appreciated, is listened to, then we can actually have serious progress, serious development trades, serious initiatives that will push the value chains and equality in the region. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sana, for a very interesting speech and advocating women. And we totally agree that women, being half the population, are not as well integrated themselves in their own societies as they should be. So if you want to make like a global region, and we talk about regional and global integration, we need also to talk about women integration within the society, especially what Sana said, and it was said also yesterday in the plenary, that the education of women in the MENA region is remarkable, and sometimes it surpasses some of the other countries in Latin America and Asia as well. So we need to take advantage of the role of women, integrate them well in the society, but also integrate them in the businesses and the entrepreneurship. So I would like to thank our speakers very much. I know Ingrid is still with us on the line. I know she needs to go in a few minutes. So I would like to open the floor for any questions for Ingrid before she disappears, and then we'll take our time with the rest of our speakers. Yes, Dr. Ibrahim. Ingrid, you're still with us?
Yes, indeed.
Yes, thank you so much for your patience. We're just trying to put the mic on, the questions from the participants.
No question.
Well, I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you, Ingrid, can you hear?
Yes. I just wanted
It's
to,
working.
first of all, thank you very much for this very interesting presentations. There are three issues that I would like to quickly raise. The first one is that we need to distinguish between forward integration into regional supply chain or global supply chain and backward integration. Forward integration essentially, attains competitiveness in the southern Mediterranean or Africa if the macroeconomy is very competitive, especially the exchange rate. If you have a misaligned exchange rate with high interest rate, and it will be very difficult actually to integrate forward. And this would be very relevant to the points raised about female-led SMEs who will actually be in a position to export to countries in Europe, for example, products that reflect speciality of the countries in question in the south, as well as affordability. The second observation is about backward integration. Backward integration, if perhaps the best example is Morocco, where Morocco is actually engaged in high-tech products and so on. But the economy of Morocco did not benefit at the macroeconomic level. There are lots of information and evidence about that. This remains an enclave. The high-tech enclave did not lead, for example, to major impact on growth or poverty and so on. And the reason being is because there were very few very few high-tech SMEs. Because in Asia, there were very large number of high-tech SMEs, and that's why the reason why it created employment and what have you and so on. And then the last one, last observation, is the role of cities. Yesterday we had at the plenary, there was an emphasis on cities, and this is really true. The name of the game is to have productive cities and networks of firms within a city. Do we have cities, or only, like, for example, the Union for the Mediterranean, which is doing an important function? Are we actually going down to lower level of governments, or only focused on state-to-state relationship? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ibrahim. Okay, so Dr. Ali.
Good morning to everybody. My name is Ali from Turkey. I would like to my question to Mark. Your analysis based on simply based on the labor cost. You're shifting labor-intensive manufacturing goods from Asia to Africa. How it's possible without standards for in the last 20 years, a few standards it was in place, but now more standards, sustainability standards, environmental standards, human rights standards, or also in this infrastructure is in progress, or you have considered in your analysis this dimension? I would like
Thank
to
you. I think we take a few questions, and then because Ingrid needs to leave in a few minutes. So if you have a question that is directed to Ingrid at the European Commission, just prioritize the questions. Everybody seemed very happy, Ingrid, with your big agenda. No questions. We just hope that we look forward to see the outcomes, and obviously with FEMISE and everyone, we are ready to provide the needed support to the Commission. Thank you very much for joining us, and it was really a pleasure to have you. I understand you need to leave, but please stay with us as long as you can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maris and colleagues, for this very, very interesting discussion and many relevant points, be it on the competitiveness, noting also the simplification of trade incentives, the role of the SMEs, the issue of women. What I just want to say, I think our agendas and also the way how we financially cooperate, it's very much aligned with these questions. And I just want to give you a quick example, which both relates to the gender issue and to the backward linkages as well. For example, because I think we need to look more deeply and more practically. And for example, we are having a regional initiative with the ILO where we look at value chains and we look, deeply with their method. What does it mean for policymakers if you invest in this value chain or in that sector? What does it mean for job creation? What does it mean for skills? How is the gender balance or the sex balance affected? What is the value chains and sectors which are more prone for women engagement and so on? So I think my message is taking up a lot of interesting elements, but which are very much aligned with our approach. And with that, many thanks and a good rest of the meeting. And sorry that I need to leave you a bit earlier.
Thank you very much, Ingrid. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we'll take some questions from the floor. Yes, please go ahead.
Hello, good morning. My name is Uriol Barba. I'm the director of MedCities, the Organization of Mediterranean Local Authorities. I would like to take it from the colleague that was asking the local level next to me, just to point out that the situation at local level and local authorities in the region, especially in the southern Mediterranean, is worsening over the years. It's not just that this is stained, it's worsening in countries like Lebanon or Tunisia. The capacity of local authorities to undertake public policies is worse than 10 years ago. And this, I think, has a strong relationship with what we're discussing today. Because most of the economic development and the value change, they have a local dimension, and SMEs have a crucial role. And local authorities, they have to play a role in terms of promoting local developments and having local regulations that affect a lot how those business can move forward, et cetera, et cetera. So I just wanted to point out the importance of having in mind this local dimension. And I think it's not possible to create value change without local governance. Those things would be contradictory. So yeah, and profiting from the comment, I would also make the questions, how do speakers see this situation, and how do they consider that local authorities and cooperation among them, because it's not normally a matter of one single city, it's a matter of several cities or villages working together in a intermunicipal approach, how this could be enhanced in order to, to achieve this goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think maybe Anna, you would respond, but at the end, so about the cities and how local authorities, and maybe Mohammed, you can say a few words as well. Okay.
Yes.
So yes, Ahmed, I'll just take a few questions, okay, and then I'll ask the speakers to respond. So you already have.
Thank you, Marise, and thank you all for this enlightening session. I just have a few number of comments. Talking about value chains and few advantages, if not the only one, of the crises that we're passing by in terms of Ukraine, Russia, as well as the COVID effect, is that the redesign of global value chains. And when we look at what's happening here in the region, in the South Med, we find only one or two examples, one mentioned by Ibrahim, the success story of Morocco, and the other one, which is the gas cooperation between a number of countries, including Cyprus, Greece, and Egypt. But yet, the pressure now is to have value chains, and the redesign of the global value chains is happening now. As a non-specialist in value chains, I don't see anything tangible happening in the region. So if Anna and Mohammed can elaborate on this by providing some vivid examples, and where is the main problem? Is it political, or is it lack of, as you rightly said, political willingness, or there is something wrong the readiness of the countries? Coming to Mark, and when he mentioned that we should have more or less export competitiveness more important than regional integration, in a way or another, he's saying that we should relax, if I got it right, the rules of origin issue. That's what you said. But we have other examples where rules of origins are relaxed, and what ended up, there is no deepening of industrialization and a Chinese aggressive attitude towards coming in the market. So how to reconcile those two issues? Finally, to Sana, women, yes, there is a discrimination against them. We have to admit that. But is this the main issue that's preventing the flourishing? Because given we have success stories of a country like Japan, where women are highly discriminated against, yet they don't have a problem. And we have a huge unemployment in the South countries in this region, and yet the potential is still there without bringing up the issue of women discrimination. So if you can elaborate how this is affecting, thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed. So you'll keep our speakers busy. Yes, Munder, and then I will ask the speakers to respond. Munder.
Thank you. Munder Lassasi from Algeria. So I have just one observation for Anna. Yes, women are more and more at the university. The share of women increase over time. But if you look, you disaggregate, or you look at the distribution by field of studies, we can see that women are less in the technical fields. Women are more in the literature and other law and others, where the opportunity of employment is very less. So the problem is in the orientation in the beginning. Why women don't choose for the different reasons, social norms and other reasons. So we should look in the beginning for the orientation of the choose of the studies, the field of studies. And thanks.
Thank you, Munder. So I'll give the floor to our speakers. So I'll start with Anna and just go, because I think Sana will have quite a few things to say. I'll start with Anna, please.
Yes,
So,
thank you. Yeah, about the question about the city and local governance, crucial cooperation issue, and so on. First, I don't know very much what is the reason for that. I think there might be better to understand is the qualification of the institutional function that is not really developed. So we need maybe to think also of qualification, not only skilled labor jobs we need, but we need also skilled and top qualified probably managers of cities. Cities are crucial because are big bodies. They need to be, for sure, investing a lot in their apparatus. So I think that one problem is to really focus much more on qualification because probably there is a lack maybe of awareness, of information, of really good practices elsewhere that needs to be maybe, so it's a training or qualification needed. So I have just this idea in mind. The second question was by Ibrahim, or no?
one by Ahmed. Why is there the integration not happening? What is it? Lack of willingness? Is it not ready yet? What's your point on that?
well, it's a very complicated issue because, as it was said by Ingrid, it's like complex and the convergence of different issues, different problems. So we don't have one explanation, I think, for why this is not occurring. We have so many gaps to fill in many different sectors. As probably is not just for the South Mediterranean, but also for the North Mediterranean. Let's think of Italy. So we have to think very much about a complex world and that needs very much to progress in different directions. Not only is about economics, as we all know, but one important thing is, of course, the institution. So the institutional level is crucial, and come back again, like in the previous issue of the cities. Probably there was one more question, but maybe it was not, I don't know whether it was for me, a woman in the university, or was for, I don't know. Oh, yes, sure. Yeah, it's, I don't know very much whether, I mean, it's something that we need to check, because I have seen that actually yesterday someone was considering that in the Arabic world the performance in STEM is better for women than for men. I mean, in general, the statistics are suggesting that the choice probably is true, is biased toward humanistic. This is not only in South Mediterranean countries as well, but I think in terms of performance, probably, we need to make sure that the women are not performing as well as in STEM sector. So this is my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Anas. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Mohammed, can you give your response to
Yes.
these two questions?
Yes, I have a comment for the points raised by Mr. Ibrahim and your good self from Mid-Cities. Currently, we are in the process of drafting the description of actions that will guide the work of OECD on the second edition of the UFM Progress Report on Regional Integration. So it's very helpful to listen and to gather opinions, because we want to make sure that this report would be inclusive not only in terms of gender, but also geographically speaking, and not just between the North and the South, but within the North and within the South at regional, sub-regional, municipal, and local level. So thank you for raising this issue. I'm not sure how the working methodology or approach of OECD will be like in order to tackle this concern, but it will be on the table for consideration into the report. For the questions raised by Mr. Ghunim at the back, please allow me to rephrase it to make sure that I'm on the same page. Why is proximization not kicking off in the region, right? I can cite some reasons without prioritization, but I can say, for example, that the South-South paradigm is not fully digested by many policymakers in the South. They think they are getting and would get from the bilaterals with the European Union much more than what they would get cooperating with other countries through a South-South framework. Part of this culture and mentality also is that we often see political conflicts and security concerns overriding the economic logic. So many opportunities are lost over this, and we know that the region has many living conflicts, unfortunately, that get in the way of otherwise promising initiatives, and the classical example here would be the Agadir Agreement, which unfortunately, despite its potential, didn't quite take off, and we all know why. Another thing is also the lack of convergence and the lack of political willingness to work on the convergence of legislations at different domains of regional integration. And even now, when we work with some of the countries in the region to map and to try to understand the realities on the ground, there are so many basic data series that are missing altogether. So part of the work that we will be doing in the second edition is actually develop the data series from scratch and make sure that they stand up to a standard that would render the figures at least credible and trustworthy to work with. I have to add something also. It might sound drastic, but it should come as no surprise. Value chains offer a huge potential for healthy economies. There are many economies in the region that are unhealthy, meaning they are in dire need of structural reforms. There is no transparency, there is no proper governance, there is no clear conflict resolution mechanism. The private sector is somehow marginalized. The civil society is almost non-existent, or at least completely weakened in many of these countries. Sectors like the social economy are still under-legislated, and many legal forms are not yet recognized by some of the member states. These are all impediments. These are all boundary conditions and prerequisites, and I think that we have a lot of homework to do in the southern Mediterranean, and I say we because I'm Egyptian myself, even though I do not represent Egypt, I'm not a diplomat, but we have a lot of work to do in the southern Mediterranean region in terms of preparedness, in terms of all these prerequisites to stand a better chance to reap what seem to be low-hanging fruit for reconfiguration of regional and global value chains. I hope this answers your question, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mohammed, for a very elaborate and realistic points that we understand is challenging. I just now move to Mark.
May I add?
Sure, of course.
I'm sorry to
No,
override, but something also that I think would fit into the discussion that we're having, because this obviously is not a one-way discourse. It's a dialogue, hopefully. And classically speaking, every single country in the world throughout its history had to make at a certain point in time a decision regarding what we call the trade trilemma, not dilemma, trilemma. To trade, to raid, or to protect. The tools of the trade have changed. The modalities have changed. When I say now raid, it doesn't mean military action. There are many, many ways of being aggressive with your trade policies and with your foreign policy in general without firing a bullet. So every single country in the region, in the aftermath of the disruptions, is again facing this trilemma. What shall we do? Shall we open up for free trade? Are we ready? Shall we raid? Are we powerful enough actually to have it our way and to coerce other, between parentheses, partners into accepting our conditions that are not fair? Or shall we protect? And we see this happening every day, even among the big players like the US, like China. And again, when your economy is healthy, you have the full repertoire. When it's not, you might end up being coerced into one of these choices that you have not made. I say this because there was this very interesting statistic about China losing percentage points, and think, how would China make up for that? If trade the way we know it and protection the way we know it is not working for them to sustain a massive population, and you can remove China and put any other superpower or any other big economy in the world, the raid option is still on the table. And there are many, many ways to raid smaller economies without any military action at all. So it's just a thought to keep at the back of our minds. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Very interesting idea. And I turn to Mark to answer the questions as well as to see what...
I'll try to make it short.
Okay.
Basically, there were two questions about the standards, and puis on the trade regulation and rules of origins. So about the standards, so I understand that you were speaking about social and environment standards mainly. Well, in fact, investment and production location decision in the labor-intensive industries, let's say that the big buyers and the producers, the enterprise, they doesn't care about social and environment standards. They just move where the cost competitiveness is the most attractive. So it's a little bit changing. So not completely correct what I said, but it's the main force that direct production and export location, it's a cost. So what has changed during the last 20 years, and it will continue it will become more and more, let's say, compulsory, are the social standards. In fact, for most producers, garment producers and so on, it becomes difficult to exploit too much the labor force. They need to have some minimum of labor regulation. It's more and more checked, assessed by external companies and so on. So it's done already. It means that for the new producers in Africa or elsewhere, they won't have the choice. They will have to follow a minimum social level in terms of social conditions. It's not an issue. About the environment standards, it's quite different because it's everywhere in the atmosphere, but nowhere really in terms of international standard, international regulation, international rules, business practices. So there is a lot of green washing and green promotion at the company level, but all producers, the big companies, H&M, and so on, in fact, they don't know how to implement environmental standards in order to present themselves as environment friendly, because there is no international rule so far. And so it may change in the next 20 years or 10 years, I don't know, but it's at this level, it's not really a constraint. And if it becomes one constraint, it won't change the cost competitiveness issue. You just add cost, an additional cost, in order to follow these new standards. So, I mean, the new producers, the last generation of important exporters of labor-intensive products such as Cambodia, Bangladesh, Ethiopia, or Madagascar, they are not really well known for being respectful of social or environmental standards, especially Bangladesh, which should be the second, I think, major exporters of garment in the world. I don't say it's a good thing, it's a reality. We can hope it will change, but so far it is not an entry barrier, it is not a barrier to growth, I mean, not to follow the standards. And it means also in the other way that it is not a competitive advantage to be socially, to have very high social standards, so far. Maybe it will change. And for the other issue on rule of origin at the European or Euromed level, I mean, the basic point is that it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Diagonal accumulation, preferential trade system promoted by the EU with South Mediterranean partners, it doesn't work. One of the countries that should, or sectors that should be the main beneficiary of the decrease of the loss of competitiveness of China in the garment and so on sector should be Tunisia. But in fact, Tunisia exports are not growing. So there are many reasons, of course. It's not the only reason, but it means that in terms of incentive to economic development, production and employment growth and so on, the European trade preference scheme doesn't work. It's too complicated. I mean, for small producers, SMEs, it's quite a mess to follow the rules and to add one part of value added and so on, and to fulfill the custom documents. And in terms of competitiveness, it doesn't generate a gain, an advantage, except for a few products. You were speaking about the Agadir agreement. I have been working a lot on this agreement the last years, during the last period. It doesn't work because South-South exchange at the South Mediterranean level doesn't work. I mean, the case of the Moroccan, the made in Morocco Dacia cars or Renault Dacia cars that should have been exported to other countries such as Egypt, benefiting from this free trade, the Agadir free trade agreement. So I think a number of cars had been exported, but it was quite difficult, and it's, I think, the only success. Obvious success of this agreement. Well, sorry, but just one point. It's important to look elsewhere. I mean, in East Asia, for instance, there has been quite a deep regional integration without such kind of trade preference scheme. There has been regional integration pushed first by Japan with East Asia, with Southeast Asia, then by South Korea and Taiwan that invested in this country. And now, during the last 2 decades, China has redesigned this regional integration, but there is no specific trade agreement or free trade agreement between China and Southeast Asia, for instance. Voilà, sorry, I stopped. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
I'll
just give the floor to Sanat to respond to the first round of questions. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Very two interesting questions. Thank you. I'll start with Dr. Ibrahim, right? On the back. That's your name? Yes? Dr. Ahmed. Thank you for your question. I would really, really not go and compare Japan to the MENA region. I wouldn't go there for simple reasons. Asia has always stood different when it comes to their economic recovery plans. I mean, Japan specifically with the Hiroshima, they have, they understood that they don't have any resources other than the human capital. And they made sure that everyone is involved in reconstructing, in rebuilding the country. And that's something we see in Asia. I mean, if you look into Singapore, it's a country of less than 70 years ago. Their policy is to integrate everyone, man, woman, migrant, everybody is an economic actor. Now, if we're gonna look into the social cultural differences between men and women, you got me there. There is discrimination indeed, but on economic level, everybody is a producer because that's how they see it. They see that everybody can contribute to the economic growth of the country. So, and also like to consider the economic aspect in itself alone and exclude like, the human right, to actually be dignified, to be included, to be, pushed. I think that's a danger itself for the progress of societies. It's not only about including women when there is an economic crisis, it's about making sure that there is kind of, representative when it comes to rebuilding and reconstructing a country. So that's why for me, the MENA region stands different in the sense that we have female talent, but they are not included, and that's mainly because of the social and cultural norms. And that in itself should be changed. We've seen Tunisia that stood different, it stands different still in the region where we can see that, when women are given the space, where women are given the rights, they can contribute, they can do much more. So I think Japan and MENA region are very two different regions. And I wouldn't simplify, discrimination by giving an economic comparison. That definitely wouldn't help the future of the region, and wouldn't help also the future of humanity in general. And then I'll go to the question of our friend from Algeria. I had the chance to work a lot in Algeria. I actually spent 1 month in Algeria last year. The number of women, engineers, doctors that I met who don't work, who are at home, married, with kids, are enormous. And just to highlight, indeed, orientation is an issue in the region, but it is an issue for men and women. Unfortunately, in our region, our educational system is not good enough to give us the right orientation, to guide us into the right studies, to actually have a link between what the university is teaching and what the market is in need for. That's an issue for everyone. But still, we don't have that much of men in technical fields, let's say. We don't have that much of men in STEM. In the region, especially Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia, we have more women having masters and PhD comparing to men. The issue lies, once again, in the cultural perspective, in the social perspective. Because the difference between men and women is that women have the social pressure when it comes to their social roles, responsibilities in society. We are conditioned in a way that women, their fulfillment, their success, relies at the end of the day, no matter what the achievements she does or she achieves in her professional life, the personal life comes first. And being married, having kids, although there is nothing wrong with that, you know, you can do both. You can have kids, get married, and work as well. But still, in the region, there is this pressure. And out there, any woman here in this room who comes from the region who wouldn't say so. I am myself Moroccan. I mean, although Morocco, I feel like it's more open-minded, but still, you feel that pressure that, you know, oh, you're not married, even though if you are, you know, the CEO of the biggest tech company in the region.
Thank you, Sanaa, for a very life-felt experience, which is very relevant as well, because just to take us back to where is this all coming from, it's because we, Sanaa and those who just joined us, that women, half the population, are not integrated in the societies. And talking about regional value chains, we need to talk to the lower level, micro level, and we talk micro level, we talk human capital, we talk women, we will talk skill, and then we also talked about SMEs at large. Why are most of the enterprises integrated in the value chains are large enterprises? Why small enterprises are not integrated? We also talked about cities, how important that city address or target cities at municipalities, and we also talked higher level, so we took it from macro to micro to really, really, really micro. And I think regional integration is all about putting all this together in a context that will allow population also to feel the impact, the benefit of the value chains in their real life. And this is the role of the policymakers. We talked about how there is a lack of competitiveness, that a lot of the governments in the South Med countries are not ready yet. There is a lack of infrastructure, a lack of institutional background, and sometimes lack of willingness, like they don't want to do it. There are tensions, there are other challenges, other issues. So it is quite complicated, as Anna briefly said. It's quite complicated, but I mean, we're getting there. Mark told us there is a window of opportunity, and if we don't do it now, maybe we will lose this window of opportunity. So we very much encourage all our governments in the South to be able to grasp this opportunity. Do it quickly, because if we don't do it now, it's going to be too late. I'm sorry I have to close the session. We have a coffee break, but of course we can listen from the participants. We can have any questions with the speakers while on the coffee break. Thank you very much for a very lively and active session. I thank the speakers. Thank you very much, Anna, Ahmed. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Sana.
En fait, c'est des trucs sur les sociétés traditionnelles. Parce que